Good morning, 40K people. It is a Wednesday. It is 7 o'clock in the morning. And that means that Noah and I have put hats on to make sure that our hair looks nice. Right? And yes, we've got very different situations going on. Polar opposite situations. We are here, and it has been a wildly brutal week for me. And I'm still excited to be here and talk 40K. How about you, Noah? You having a good week?
Wah. It's been a rough week for sure as well. Like,
yeah,
life was like, hey, I've got a bunch of bricks in this bag. I would like to lob them at you. And while life is, I think I'm keeping on. It's life's not taking it easy, but I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, which we'll talk about in here in just a minute. I think that it is a really hard time for a lot of people, is what I would say. Very stressful for a number of reasons we're not going to talk about. Because this morning is about a beacon of happiness in the distance. That's what it is. Noah and I have no interest in being down or depressing. If we were interested in that, this would be therapy and not 40K chatting. Right?
Yeah, it can be mildly therapeutic sometimes, but for sure.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. We don't have a great deal of news. It's just not one of those weeks. So we're going to cover the news that we do have. Noah's got a big event this weekend he's going to talk about. And then I have a collection of just kind of random things I've been wanting to talk about that I've assembled. So we'll have kind of a weird round of Colin bringing up topics that aren't related to each other. That'll be good. And then our big topic today is practice. Practice? We're talking about practice? We are talking about practice. When I did Biff Pod, and we did any sort of ask questions segment, one of the most common questions was, what do you think is important about practice games? How do I get better practice? How do I do the thing? And so I put together a bunch of those thoughts, and I realized that the part of it that I am most equipped to help with is the people part of it. So what I've put together is kind of, how do you do a social construct with your opponent? And how do you vibe correctly and work together to make sure you're both getting the most out of it that you can? So that's what I'm going to talk about. And then Noah is going to talk about the other approach to practice, the other part of practice, which is getting the most out of the mechanics of what you're doing. Right, Noah?
Indeed you do.
Okay, cool. So we'll do that in just a minute. But first, we're supposed to talk about what we've done this week that's 40K related. You first.
I have black lined, so like my orcs are all brightly colored, and they are on the process of being cell shaded. Eventually, I'm going to be doing a big. My display board is going to make it look like they're all in a comic book that's been drawn by a toddler or young child, like cardboard cutouts and crayon and stuff, and make it look very comic booky. But the process of that is cell shading. So I have drawn black lines with a paintbrush on like 60 models over the last week. That is very monotonous, but it's been good. I've also played like 6 games of 40K since the last time we talked, because my wife went away on a trip. And I've been practicing for
5 and 1. That's my guess.
What?
Your practice games, 5 and 1.
Yeah, that is exactly my current record.
I just figured that somebody got you. That's what I figured.
Yeah, I tried a different, which we'll talk about later. I tried a different strategy than I would ever do in a tournament game against Custodes, and I got punished severely for it. But I'd never done it before, so I wanted to try it.
Now you won't do it again.
Exactly. So now I know what happens.
That's great. Yeah, we'll talk about that whole thing as part of our practice conversation. So that'll be great. I did nothing with my models. That's not true. I packed a bunch of them. We're getting ready to downsize our house, and I look at all my 40K stuff and think, man, that's going to be awful to move. And so I started packing some of it away. That's like, well, I don't think I'm going to play June between now and moving. So I did some of that. No painting because there's no event on my immediate schedule. And that's the only way I can get painting done is the dopamine of there's an event coming up and you need to have this ready for it. I'm never I have unpainted Jane Star over here on the shelf. I've played like 10 practice games with her and think she's great. And I will not paint her until I actually have a reason to do so. That's just my brain. So, but I have done a lot on the network this week, and I do want to try and this into a little bit of a network update because I don't have a show that's appropriate to do. I don't have Best in Faction that's like the obvious show to do a network update on. So I'm going to do it here. This has been really interesting. Wow. So I have started making these shorts, which are getting a lot of attention. But basically, we're doing the live episodes that you can go back and watch later, and then we're doing shorts so that I'm basically cropping down the content into short, more interesting segments, quick, interesting, or entertaining segments, and they've been doing well. So that's been exciting. And I looked at the content that we're creating, and I thought about the experience of doing Better Human, Better Gamer last week, where I talked about being seen as a cheater, even though I didn't feel like a cheater. But I acknowledged the mistakes that I had made in my sloppy prep and play. I don't like that thing that I made. I'm just owning it. It's the only thing I've made in a long time content-wise that I'm just not that proud of. The reason I'm not that proud of it isn't that I did a bad job or it wasn't entertaining. It's that it's the wrong approach. The quest that I put myself on, the way that I framed it, the way I spoke about it, none of it's actually right for the vibe of the network right now and what I want to do. And a big part of that is I am redoing a whole bunch of structure with my kids. I'm helping them overcome a bunch of stuff. I'm downsizing my house. I'm looking for work. I'm going to therapy. Like, it is not the right time for me to talk openly and vulnerably about what I have going on with me. It's just not right. It is going to turn into therapy too quickly, or I'm just going to be negative. And I don't need either of those things on the network. So I am going to do Better Human, Better Gamer, but I'm not going to do it right now. Instead, I'm going to focus the network on entertainment for now. And we're going to keep doing Competitive Advantage, which I just love doing. Noah's great. And we're going to keep doing the RPG, which has also been incredibly fun on those nights. And then I'm going to start 2 different shows that I'm not going to tell you about yet, but they're both going to be 15 to 25-minute episodes. They're going to be produced ahead of time, post-production done on them, short, put together, just 90 minutes to 2 hours of people talking. I think that format is incredibly valuable, especially to the people that had a big podcast addiction for so many years. But it's not the only content that I can do, because in 2025, it's unlikely someone's going to come in and listen to 5 minutes of this and be like, 2 hours? That sounds great. Not that we talk for 2 hours, but it's a big time commitment. So you need to know us and you need to understand us. And so what I'm going to do is make easier to devour content. And both those shows are going to be wildly entertaining. One is lore focused, which I've never done before. And the other one is a thing that's hilarious. The other one is, I wrote up a synopsis of it yesterday. I got feedback on it. What is it? I have no idea off the top of my head. So one of them's a lore show. The other one's a hobby show about painting. I just haven't told Noah about it yet. Okay. So those will hopefully be announced next week after the house is listed on the market and I'm not doing 15 hours of pressure washing over a couple days. That's what's going on with the network. Okay. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Oh, I'm sorry. News of this week. This is really the same thing. Good. And the other. I guess. Noah?
You are cutting out for me, and I'm trying to figure out if it's my internet or your internet.
Oh, it was probably mine. Yeah, I'm going to reconnect. Okay. It won't end the stream. I'll be back.
I have you alone finally. I told you about our Lord and Savior, the Wa. Owing our Colin come back, I was remarking that one of the goods was Colin lives currently in an area that I spent some time in growing up, and there are these very annoying, very consistent birds that happen in the spring and the summer, and I could hear them through his mic when we were getting ready, and I was saying that specifically was giving me good nostalgia vibes.
Yeah. You know what does it for me? Because of growing up in the Pacific Northwest, we didn't have air conditioning growing up. And the vast majority of the year, I had the window open in my bedroom. I'd say like 10 months of the year. If there wasn't snow on the ground, I had my window open. And there's this sound of the rain hitting the leaves of all of the different bushes and plants in the Pacific Northwest. And that sound is very soothing for me. I like it a lot. I like that noise a lot. So noise, that blaring, awful noise. No, I like that noise a lot. Okay. So Space Marine 2. I haven't played Space Marine 2, but I bet you have. So why don't you talk about the DLC? Okay. So what's up with the DLC? What are they adding?
They added so one of the big draws to Space Marine 2 that everybody loves is that in addition to a really cool storyline that had a bunch of immersive play, which was great, and good PvP, is there was co-op. There's an extra storyline, like an extra story arc that runs parallel to the primary storyline as Titus, where there's these group of 3 Space Marines going and doing these missions that support the existing storyline. They added a new one of those that involves going and fighting a Trigon, which is super cool. The one before that, they added fighting a Bio-Titan, which is also cool. So you can fight almost all of the cool Tyranid monsters now. I think the only one you can't fight yet is an Exocrit.
Well, that seems problematic.
Yes. But the Trigon looks great. They added also a bunch of like aesthetic pieces like Dark Angel stuff and a bunch of different chapters. And I don't believe they've added new weapons this one yet, but I will double check. But the Trigon one is the thing. The Trigon level is the thing everyone's super excited about. And people are having a good time not getting attacked from below.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great. What else do we think is good this week about 40K news or activity?
There is a person and a thing that I think is really great about 40K, which is Dan Miner and Wet Coast.
Okay.
So Wet Coast is one of our longest running, like consistently longest running, and probably largest. It's probably the largest other than GW events in the Northwest. So I think the player cap is 200 people, something like that. I think they're sitting at 148 right now. Some of the best players in the Northwest and Canada and extended parts of Canada will be there. And Dan Miner, who is an absolutely wonderful human who I very much enjoy, runs the tournament. But what's cool about it is he also attends like all of the big tournaments in the area ran by independent organizers. So you always when I run an event, he's at my events. When Bob Kelly runs an event, he's at his events. And then he turns around and runs these big events himself. So he's really reinvests in the community. He is also growing and supporting. He also makes a bunch of cool templates and laser cut stuff. So I'm very excited this weekend because I get to go play Wet Coast with a bunch of amazing people, an event ran by a really amazing person. And he does something very interesting, which is his event is on the Friday and Saturday before Easter. So I get to go do Friday, Saturday, and not miss the Sunday holiday with my family. So it's going to be a good weekend, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about your prep for that when we talk about practice here in a little bit. I've never been to Wet Coast, and right now my passport is expired. And I looked at what it costs for me to renew my passport, and I was offended, and so I will do it later.
You can just get an enhanced license for literally $45.
You still have to have a passport for that, don't you?
Negatron Ghost Rider. My passport is currently expired. I am crossing the border with an enhanced license.
Okay. Well, fair enough then. I'll do that because there's often tournaments in Canada I want to go to, partially because Canadians aren't as good at 40K as we are. And so it makes it a much softer meta. No, I'm just talking trash. So yeah, that's very good. And EC finally got announced. Like they're finally going to make that and like release it.
I think it drops Saturday, right? It's been
I
on.
think the pre-orders were this weekend, but don't they do 2-week pre-orders now?
The pre-order started last Saturday. So maybe. I can find out.
Okay. So that's exciting. And as a little riff on that, we did a thing last week where I asked people what they want to see me learn. And unanimously, it was Emperor's Children. So I will be learning Emperor's Children once I have the ability to have the rules to set army, which currently I do not have, which will make it very difficult for me to learn. But I will end up with the rules.
I will drop my book by at my earliest convenience.
Okay. So I'm supposed to learn Emperor's Children. I talked to Violence about it. He said there are 2 different attachments. One is more fun. One is better. Do you want to guess what he said, Noah?
That the coterie one was more fun? Or did he say that Carnival of Excess was more fun?
I'm going to look so I don't get it wrong. Coterie is better. Carnival is more fun.
Yes. Okay, that's what I expected. Coterie is the one where you make a declaration of the number of units that you are going to beat the living tar out of and murder on your turn. If you hit at least that number, you get that many points. When those points hit certain thresholds, you get new buffs. The first one is rerolls, and then you get like lethals and sustained along the way, and then eventually you get crit 5s after you've gotten a score of 7, which is a lot, but you get really, really powerful. It's got some great stratagems. It has very good damage output. It's really good. Carnival Excess is the demon hybrid one. It's got some really crazy shenanigans, like being able to charge again during the fight phase if some daemonettes kill something. So it's got some really cool shenanigans. And then what's cool is the other ones in the book aren't terrible. There is one that is a little that this doesn't have enough output. The transport one is actually really good, except as soon as all your rhinos are dead, you don't have a detachment rule anymore. So it's got a rough, like it's got a gameplay restriction, but otherwise it does a bunch of really cool stuff. And then the melee one, the like standard melee one, like being not as good as the other two, is still just like every time you charge, you pick if you want lethal or sustained hits with every single unit in your army who are all melee badasses, and it has a bunch of melee power-up stratagems that make you better at murdering everything. So that book is really good. The best thing about that book is that how everybody thinks it's bad. Everybody thinks that it's not good, that it doesn't have enough stuff, and then the best players in the world who are practicing it and playing it and doing whatever look at it and say, this book is amazing. Everyone else looks at it and says it's terrible. And I think that's going to result in several people going, like beating the living tar out of some tournaments in the future, because it will be grossly underestimated until it starts just walking all over everybody.
Yeah.
Street date is April 26th, by the way. So not this Saturday, but the following Saturday.
Yeah. And I'll have rules, or Noah will loan me rules.
I'll get you.
And then I will learn that. And so here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to make short form content where I'm interviewing people that play Chaos, people that play EC, get their thoughts on it. I'm going to play some TTS games. I might do bit reps on those, where I shorten them down to 20 minutes or whatever and talk through what's happened. I'm not sure yet. I'll certainly share those on our Discord, which there isn't a way for you to access right now because the network's just restarted and I haven't figured that out yet. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do that yet. Just being completely honest, I decided I would start making content and worry about everything else after I've done it for a little while. So that's where we're at. Okay, the bad. Is it okay that I say that Space Wolves is the next codex under the bad? Is that too volatile?
I don't think so. I think Space Wolf is cool, but I think like it's just not. There are, I think, some more diverse play styles that we just don't have currently represented in the like environment that I would like to get first. Like it would be cool if like Votan got a codex before Space Wolves, because like they have 12 models. You know what I mean? Like it would be like we're adding a codex of a chapter that has more different, like unique snowflake versions of models that already exist in Marines, who already have the most extensive codex of like model, like different numbers of units than any other army by far, by like multiple factors in some cases. And then we have like Votan, who have like no data sheets, or like death. What? Drakari, which
there's some armies that are just in a really bad spot because the detachments they have don't hang. And Drakari is a tough one because the people that were doing well with it, it was not a lot of people, got it nerfed. Like they nerfed a bunch of the units, and now you have this situation. Let me explain this. When I'm helping Ynnari players understand what units to take, one of the things I say is, why are you taking Drakari units when you could take Craft Rolled Eldar units? Like, just when they were written is just vastly different. So there's armies like that just, I think, can't really function right now and need their book. I think that there's too much Space Marine stuff, and I understand why there is, and I'm not saying they should actually get rid of it. I mean, Space Marines wearing pelts is different and unique. I'm joking, actually. Wolfen is a neat unit. Thunderwolf Cavalry is a neat unit. Both of those are completely unique Space Wolves. Their plane is dumb looking but neat. I'm thinking the transport. I guess the transport and the gunship basically look the same.
The giant ray.
Santa on the sleigh is stupid. I'm just going to say that, but I like it nonetheless. Yeah, so I think Space Wolves are fine, and they're perfectly cool, but I don't want more Space Marine rules right now. That's not what I'm here for. It just seems like Space Wolves in particular, like nobody talks about it when it's on its way out. Like there's not going to be any, hey, Colin, what about the new Space Wolves? Like there's just not going to be a lot of that because in my experience, there just aren't that many Space Wolf players.
The people who are excited about Space Wolves are literally like the Space Wolf diehards. However, I do think that is a very committed group, and I also think their lore and their fluff and their aesthetic is very good for the game. Mm-hmm. It's important, I think, to have them around. They're also very kind of important to like the overall arcing story. So I get it, but like I agree with you, Drakari. I just played against Drakari as one of my practice games because there are several people who are going to White Coast, and before the event was released, like before the rosters were unveiled, I knew there were people who were going and didn't know what they were playing, but traditionally they have done very well or played a lot of Dark Eldar. None of them are taking Dark Eldar, which probably goes to what you're saying, but I did play at least one practice game. And Dark Eldar, I always have thought are very, very cool.
Yes.
But like during my practice game, I realized that detachment, one of the cooler detachments, has no way to fall back, shoot, or charge in a Drakari army, right. Which is absolutely like Space Marines have Armor of Contempt. Dark Eldar should at least have a stratagem that says 1 CP, fall back, shoot, and charge. Yeah. I think that should be in every detachment because I don't think the army functions without that capability at all.
I think that's a really hot take. I really like that. Okay. So, all joking aside, the Space Wolf Codex could be under the good or the bad.
Sure.
Depending on what you're looking for in life. What of the armies that you own, which is almost all of them, what is the next one that you'd be most excited to have a codex? And why is it Imperial Knights?
The one I'm most excited to have a codex is actually an army I don't own, okay. But which is Votan. But because I want to, Votan is the army that I've never started, that I have wanted to start more than I want to play any army I own, basically. I would say Death Guard, actually, though, is the one I'm most excited for of ones I own, because I really have always liked the aesthetic of Death Guard, and I painted mine in a very specific way, and I like Horde play styles, and there's going to be a Poxwalker. Poxwalkers are one of my favorite Horde units of all time. So there's going to be a Poxwalker detachment, we've already been told. And then I also really like small number of units, chunky plotting kind of play, and hopefully Terminators will get support. So for me, it's Death Guard, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. We just talked about mine, which is Drakari. Other than that, I've been blessed because I have Space Marines, Astramet Militarum, Tyranids, GSC, and Eldari as my other main armies, and all of those have codexes. So, what's that?
GSC are seeing a resurgence right now too, which I'm really excited about. There's a lot of people picking up GSC. There's a lot of GSC going to West Coast.
That's dope. That's never been a sentence that anyone's ever said to me.
And none of them are
When they're
McDougal.
wildly broken, there'd be like 3 people at a 200 person tournament, and they'd all have 1 loss to each other. So, well, there was this rule set with GSC through, it might be 9th, but I think it's the end of 8th, where GSC went up and down all over the table, and they just said, I'm going to score 100. What are you going to do? And that was just the game. And Nanavati would take it to tournaments and like not kill any units in his opponent's army and get 100. Like, it was so dumb. So, anyways.
I think one of the things about GSC, if I can take a quick hot take, not take, observation, I guess it's a take. GSC is an army that I think when you look at it as if you were like an early or medium or like mid into your Warhammer career player and you play against GSC, you see that it's an army that starts a lot in reserve usually and then shows up on the table. And I think there is an innate natural play style of players trying to minimize the impact of their drop turn and then respond to the GSC's arrival. And that is literally the way you lose to GSC. That is what a GSC player wants you to do. They want you to fear the drop turn, to play differently based on the drop turn, and for them to drop in, do some amount of damage, take the board, or mess up your plans, and then you'll spend your whole game trying to dig out, and trying to like get momentum that you will never be able to actually build.
Yep.
And the thing that like I learned to love myself when I realized, because of Tyler Bortel, and he told me so, he's like, Noah, if you're going to play against GSC, put your foot down on the gas, never take your foot off. That is the only way you can beat GSC. And I think that is the only way I've ever been beaten GSC.
Yeah.
But I think
it's
it's
totally
natural.
what I do with Yanari, because I can't keep enough screening units long enough. And so what I have to do is table everything that's on the table and then just take losses when the deep strike comes in.
Yeah, when I play against GC, unless I'm playing, I don't know what other army, but most of the time I look at it and go, okay, cool, I'm going first. Sweet, everything is advancing. And I try to touch every corner of the table I possibly can and just hope for the best.
Okay. I don't have any ugly this week.
I have one.
Okay, go do it.
So while I think generally the game balance is getting closer to a better place, and we are seeing lots of meta representation of lots of different factions winning events, occasionally we see like spurts of like this army is winning more, and so we see a lot of them or whatever. And we have occasional things like DACA. There are a bunch of detachments who we're never going to see at tournaments, not because the detachment is not good, but because there is some fundamental component that a faction requires to operate at a competitive level that is not present in the detachments. A good example of this is Knights of Shade is not in, like a Knights of Shade equivalent, is not in the Grotmus Chaos Knights detachment that we got, which means the fundamental way that Chaos Knights has become good of being able to move through walls and bypass some of these really major restrictions of terrain doesn't exist in this other detachment. And because of that, it also doesn't have the rotate ion shields equivalent, the demonic Aegis that lets you get a 4-up pinball and shooting. Because it has neither of those things, no one is taking that detachment. Even though the detachment might not be the best, I think if it had either of those strats or both of those strats, it would still be entertaining. It would be like entertained. And I think that's true for a lot of different, like we talked about Drakari. There's a lot of detachments that don't have a way to fall back and shoot, like a stratagem. So I feel like there needs to be a core stratagem like Armor Contempt that is present in every single detachment for each faction that allows them to operate in a way that like gives something reliable that unlocks something that's really important for them. Like Armor of Contempt is very important. And we currently don't have that. And because of that, we have a bunch of really cool detachments that we will never see in competitive play. Or if we see them in competitive play, they are not going to do very well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Good take. Good take. I do think it's hard to keep all of them balanced, but I think that you're not saying that. I think what you're saying is there's a core thing missing, which is the understanding of how some of these armies play, and their index codex, rather their index detachment, knows that and understands that and is doing that thing, but the rest is not. And I'll give you a great example before the Eldar Codex. the Grotmus Eldar detachment is hot trash. And the reason it's hot trash is because the detachment's entire rule is making vehicles go faster. Well, vehicles going faster and advancing shooting isn't actually that great for Eldar. And what it does is it misses all of the other stuff that Eldar does that makes it work. And so it's this detachment that's like, I don't fall back and shoot, even though I'm a vehicle detachment. What? So like there's just the core mechanics that make Eldar work are just not there. So
yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's do some quick topics. And then let's do practice first. That'll be better.
I love me some practice.
Practice. We're talking about practice. Practice?
Practice.
Practice.
Hey,
okay,
I'm going to go for you, Colin. How do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Practice.
Exactly
right. How do you get girls to go out with you? Practice. Okay. So how do you parent? Failing. No.
Let's say drugs and alcohol. No.
Failing and learning from your lessons. That's kind of like practice. There's actually no practice in parenting. There's only game time.
It's all permanent.
Yeah, there's somebody I know who has a baby. She has twins. And I was telling her a story about one of my teenagers, and she melted down at how insane it was. And I said, you don't understand. You are going to screw up these children. Like, it's just the way that it is. Something about these children is going to be fundamentally broken when they're a grown-up, and that's fine. You can be supportive of them while they fix it. But you're going to screw them up somehow.
I think we need a competitive scorecard of like the parent who wins is the parent who has resulted in the least amount of therapy bills for their children.
Yeah. Someone told me once that parenting is the most effed up thing you'll ever do because it's a test where you don't find out how you did for 20 years.
God, thanks. You just ruined my life.
Like, I could be doing the worst job right now. And I won't know for a long time. Okay. So practice. So first, I want Noah to talk about preparing for Wet Coast, practice-wise. And then he's going to talk about some takeaways of getting the most learning your army and getting better point of view. And then I'll go into the how to work with your opponent to get the most out of it.
Okay.
You're up now.
So I think in general, when we talk about practice, we have to think about, like, I think the first thing that comes up is that there are goals for practice, right? Normally, when you think of practice, you think of, I'm going to play this game more so that I get better. And that is generally like a good idea. But the problem is when you get into a game, you might just play the game the way that you are, like you don't play a tournament. And if you play the game the same way you always play the game, or if you haven't like identified areas you need to improve, you will just keep practicing the same way you play, and you'll stay relatively stagnant. So like going into any practice, you have to identify a couple things. One is, what as a player do I do poorly or have I struggled with, and do I need to improve? What about my existing, the list that I'm playing or the event I'm going to, do I not understand, or do I feel like I want to understand better? So I need to try those things. And then lastly is, what about my faction or list has specific weaknesses that I do understand that I need to figure out how to deal with, or how to compensate for, or how to interact with in my worst potential matchups and scenarios, right? Those I think are the three, right? Is there something I need to improve or understand better? Is there something I need to understand better or improve? Is there, or what are my specific goals of these things? And are there things that I know are bad, and how do I work on those things? So going into Wet Coast practice, that's what was on my mind. First was, I have all these missions that I need to play. I want to play every one of the missions that's coming up and make sure that they function the way with my list that I think they do in my head. Second is, I knew I have a very specific kind of bad matchup. Green Tide is specifically susceptible to elite pressure infantry armies like World Leaders, who don't rely on shooting, and Custodians. So because of those two armies and things like it, I needed to know what I I needed to figure out how I was going to deal with that, which I'll talk about here in a sec. And then I also know that I have a specific area of improvement that I need to make personally when I play, is that I sometimes lose the micros that are important to positioning for extended objective, retaining objectives, or retaining specific board control when I'm hyper-focused on a goal. So I'm trying to kill a unit. In doing so, I will end up accidentally sacrificing staying power on an objective or my board position in order to do so. And then my opponent will take advantage of that, and I will lose unnecessary number of points or positioning that I shouldn't have had to lose because I made poor decisions about the micromanaging of my positioning. Right? So I knew those are the things. I want to play the missions. I have a bad matchup I need to worry about. And I know that I have this specific behavior that keeps potentially losing me games or at least lowering my score. And I need to work on those. So I'll pause there, Colin, in case you want to say anything. But that was like I laid that out as like practice. My goal of practice is to do these 3 things.
Yeah.
That is why I'm practicing.
I think that's great. I think that you can't improve if you don't quantify and qualify. Qualify is, what am I trying to do and what does it look like and how will I know when I get better, right? If you don't have that, how do you know? One of the problems that we had years ago is that there was a skill disparity between Chuck and I, and we would play all the time and I would win 19 out of 20 games. And so while it was fun and we loved playing each other and we would actively be helping each other, and I'd be like, what about this and what about that? Because of the skill disparity and because he was losing most of the games, it was very hard for him to qualify or quantify if he was getting better, right? And so he started coming into the games with very specific things. I'm going to deploy in a way that doesn't let you do your stupid gimmick for the first 2 turns. That's my goal for this game. And then when Chuck started playing other people that played the armies I played, that's when it got really interesting, because we had done all these reps where he had lost over and over again to Tyranids or Yunari or whatever. And then you go to a tournament and he'd run into someone that's not me, and he'd have all of these different reps about the ways that army behaved, and he would have lost to that army so many times that he'd then wreck that person. So like that's a great example of kind of figuring out that practice isn't working and trying to figure out a way to tweak it, because it was helping me, but it was one of the things I'm going to talk about in my part of it.
Yeah, there are definitely factions nowadays that I look at, and if I get paired into them most of the time, I'm like not worried about the matchup unless there's a specific person playing it. And then if there's a specific person playing it, then I worry much more. And so with my practice, what I ended up doing is I played a lot of games focusing on doing things that I don't normally do to find out if those will adjust some of my potential performances against, for instance, my bad matchups. So I was like, okay, this is how I normally play the Custodes matchup. I know that I can win this matchup if I hurt their efficiency and set up a bunch of heroic intervention traps.
Sure.
And I hold off and wait so that I can choose the engagements. I played my Custodes matchup and decided, screw that. And I just took the first anchor he gave me and went really fast, turn 2 Wah. And while I kept it close, I definitely lost that game handily. And that confirmed, because I'd never done that before, that confirmed that like it wasn't just my bias. That's actually just not the way I should be playing the game. And it highlighted to me what would actually make my performance better against Custodes if I went fast. So like if I needed to go aggressive, the problem is that I just lose too much stuff too fast to the efficiency of his fighting. And that's already a bad matchup. So I was like, well, I can't use that strategy. So if my other strategy isn't going to work in that specific scenario, like my opponent sees it and holds back or whatever, then I will have a problem. So I need to be able to unlock this aggressive strategy somehow.
Yeah.
And the way that I figured that out is what I ended up doing is I ended up cutting 2 things out of my list and taking a battle wagon, because the battle wagon is actually like crazy hard to deal with for a lot of armies, which is funny because it reduces EP by 1 natively, and you can get it cover by just, having, its toe behind a wall. You end up with this.
And it's huge. So that's not that bad.
T12 16 wounds, reduce AP by 1, plus you have cover. So that means if AP 4 is shooting you, you get a 5-up invulnerable, basically, which is great. It also gets them -1 AP in combat too, which is also awesome, which means the AP 1 and 2 armies that are punching you with like damage 2, you're taking 4-up saves, and they're wounding you on 5s and 6s, depending on what it is. So like even against Stoties for the most part are wounding you on 5s. You're taking 4-ups, so you're taking 2 damage a pop. That's pretty easy for that wagon to survive.
It's also a tool set that you don't have in orcs otherwise. And what I mean by the specific one I'm thinking of is in the game, there's what I call the AP1 problem. There's a lot of armies that can't function if your armor is too high because all they have is AP1. And a great example of that is orcs. Yeah. For a long time, and I probably still, if you play an army full of Terminators into orcs, they are just sad. And maybe that's not the case anymore, but for a long time that was the case. Not Greenside that's just going to hold the board, but in general, like if the orcs are trying to kill you and you have a ton of 2-up saves, they're going to struggle. That's what
Stodes and World Leaders. World Leaders don't really have the 2-up save problem, but Stodes and World Leaders are 2 of my worst matchups. Also, Grey Knights, right? Grey Knight Warpbane is one of my hardest matchups, and part of that is because they kill me efficiently. And I'm not able to take that efficiency away fast enough because of the 2-up armor. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Thank God the Warpbane doesn't have Armor of Contempt. That's another thing about that recurring stratagem situation.
Yeah.
So to finish off the practice stuff for West Coast, so that was like I unlocked both better understanding of what I needed in my list to create more strategy options, and better understood what my limitations were, and then helped evolve my list by doing something I normally would never do in a tournament game. That's important. I think when you go into those things, making the decision like Chuck is like, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to make secondary goals. That is a good way to incrementally improve specific behaviors, right? So I like to think of improvement in anything as improving individual components. And then if you improve like one thing you do, like for instance, if you improve your ability to deploy models more effectively, then that small increase will result in more success. And then later you can focus on another area and another area. And over time you have compounded success and interaction between all these different areas you have improved, which results in an overall better, significantly better play. But focusing on improving one area at a time, because this game is so complex, I think is super important. And then the next thing, the big thing was like understanding the missions. There were a couple of the missions that I, in my head, kind of thought I would be playing a different way. Specifically the missions that they're playing on sweeping engagement, because most of the events that I go to are no one runs sweeping engagement, because Dawn of War and sweeping engagement are, in my opinion, inherently very unbalanced deployment styles, right? Dawn of War sucks. And
sweeping always has, always will. We don't allow it at Charity Hammer for 5 years straight.
And sweeping engagement is Dawn of War with parental issues. Yeah. It's just awful little, right? Yeah. So I really thought like those matchups would go a certain way. Turns out they are better for me than I thought they were. They're actually really good for me. So I actually really like sweeping engagement from a point of view of Noah winning games, but not from a point of view of like play balance.
Yeah, as a melee heavy Eldar army, if you're going to let me stand closer to them with my first strike people behind a wall, I will do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anytime.
Right. So okay, that's great. I'm going to provide a very bizarre thing. My lab, who all 130 pounds of him, is sleeping on the bed next to me, which I enjoy because I can often hear him snoring and it's soothing. And sometimes, because he's a dog, in his sleep he'll be running or chasing, right? And you'll see the legs kick a little bit. You know what I'm talking about. No, it's fantastic. So this is him, I guess, eating in his dreams. His tongue is moving in his mouth, and I can see his cheek getting hit over and over again, and he's making strange noises. So I think that he's literally dreaming about eating, and that makes me happy. Okay.
I also have a big fat Labrador.
What's that?
I also have a very heavy, like 130, 140 point Labrador, but she's significantly shorter and not as long as Gus.
Yeah, Gus is just the big boy. So, okay. Let's pivot from Noah's part of practice to mine. Mm-hmm. And I made a presentation because I was up late last night. So, maximizing value from practice games by Dome Slice and C Money, it says. Noah, you can actually give Noah any nickname you want, and it's usually appropriate. It's just kind of part of Noah's vibe.
I had a lot of like call signs in the military. They changed a lot. Big dome, roller coaster, mouth breather, lots of them. They all work.
Some of those sound nicer than others.
Some of them were nicer than others.
I think it's Big Bang Theory where Howard is going to go to the space station and the astronauts nickname him Fruit Loops because that's his favorite cereal. It's not good. Okay, so I started with a very simple trivia game, a very simple game for Noah. Here we go, Noah.
Okay.
We have 3 hours. How many Magic the Gathering games are you and I going to play?
Probably like 12.
Okay, cool.
This is we're trying to practice?
Yes.
Yeah, like 12.
Okay. And now we still have 3 hours. How many games of 40K are we going to play?
Hopefully we'll get through one.
Yeah. So the difference between that is a big deal, right? If you think about baseball, there's 162 games a year. The really good players will get to bat somewhere between 3 to 5 times a night. So you're talking about, let's say, 4 times 162. They're going to get 700 shots at hitting the baseball, and they're trying to hit it a third of the time. And that would be amazing if they could hit it a third of the time. But that's okay because they have tons of goes at it. If each of those players only had one opportunity a night and they were still only succeeding a third of the time, that would be backbreaking and soul crushing, I suspect, for them. So that's really what we're talking about here, is this kind of idea that you literally don't get to play it as much. In addition to it being slower, it is also harder to organize. You need a 6 foot by 4 foot table. You need terrain, right? Like there's all of these other things. Whereas if I was practicing Magic the Gathering, Noah and I could literally go to a Subway and sit at the table and play Magic while we eat sandwiches.
Shuffle deck, play deck, or set out 100 and something models, taking turns, and then create very specific crafted strategies where Magic is like, I draw cards and then I have to figure out what I'm doing based on the cards I've received.
Right. We're also probably not going to pause and look up rules in Magic. That's also relevant.
Read the card explains the card, Colin.
Yes, exactly right. So that's a big difference. And so what I put together is this. We're going to own a wildly bad thing about Colin, which is I neurotically care about maximizing every moment of my day. Now, when I say maximizing every moment of my day, I don't mean productivity. No. I want to have as much time each day as possible for me to do whatever the hell my brain wants to do that day. If it wants to snuggle dogs and watch TV, great. If it wants to play computer games with my friends, great. It wants to play 40K, also fine. But in order to do those things, I have to make sure I have time for them. And if I do one of those things and it's a waste of time, that eats away at me. So if I have a practice game, this happened a lot in Old World. Paint the army, put the army together, have a friend over who understands Warhammer Fantasy and Old World better than me, get the snot kicked out of me, learn nothing from the game, not have a good experience, and then they leave. I painted and hobbied all week so I could play this one game that worked with my schedule with my friends, and it was a bad experience, and I'd be cranky about it, and it would be difficult for me not to be a bad sport in that game. Because my time, which I care neurotically about, is not being spent well. Okay? So what I care a lot about is maximizing the value of that time, right? And this reminds me of one of my favorite superheroes. Now, this is not a well-known superhero, so I wanted to make sure that Noah knows about it. The superhero is, in fact, Max Value. And Max spends all of his superpowers are about making everything efficient. And so you'll notice that Max has made some decisions like not to have the E in value. It's not needed. He can get more accomplished with just 4 letters. You'll see that Max has purchased the least amount of fabric possible to make his super suit out of. So Max is all about the value. Were you aware of Max, Noah?
No, but his glasses are also the minimum size required to cover his face.
Yeah, that's his disguise. I was telling Stephanie last night that while he is incredibly good at making things more efficient, his downside is he is a douchebag. So that's the.
Is this a real hero, or is this an AI fever dream that Colin created?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, cool.
I think that I like the idea that he's like really he's got all these superpowers, but then he goes on a date and he's just this complete douche to women. I feel like that's a weird superhero.
He looks like half of the sergeants I had in the Marine Corps. Just so you know.
Yeah, I bet that's true. By the way, his bicep on his right arm is doing something really weird that I just thought I would point out to you. His arm is down at his side, yet he is flexing his bicep. Anyways, let's move on. Okay, so in order to help people understand how I get the most out of practice games, I've made the SFAP system.
I think that acronym should be changed.
No, it's the SFAP system, Noah. And it stands for
the super FAP.
Yes, it stands for set expectations, friendship, ask good questions, and pay it forward. Arbitrarily came up with these, and they spelled SFAP, so it's the SFAP system. Okay.
I would love to SFAP with you.
All right. So, well, it's important when you're getting together with your friends that you make sure that you're SFAPing correctly.
Yeah, I love SFAP.
Let's tolerate Colin for just a moment. This is a thing that I talk about a lot. It is about awareness. If you read management books and business books, which I've read, 50 of, because I was in kind of consultative sales for over 20 years. So like, I'm not used to selling. I'm used to like having an in-depth, long conversation with a company about exactly what it needs to do and all of that. And if you read those books, there is one thing attached through research and science to success above all other traits. Now, some books disagree, but this is kind of the dominant one that I've run into. And it's self-awareness. The reality of the situation is that if you don't understand yourself and you're not sure about yourself, you will simply not make good decisions, and you will simply not make great friends, and you just won't improve in the way that you probably want to. The way that I think about this is this concept of the Johari window. I know this is very nerdy. I'll only take a few minutes on it, but this is, if I had one thing to teach you guys over like 4 episodes, this is the thing.
I love the Johari window.
It's so good. So here's the idea. There's 4 boxes, and these are the things about you. Now, there's versions of this that have examples of what?
I just coughed.
Okay. There's examples of this that have traits all over it, but the traits are all positive, and that's not actually what this is about. So in the top left corner, so you would take all the things about you. I am smart, and I'm analytical, and I'm creative. Do people, those would go somewhere on there, but I'm also easily distracted. That would go on there as well. So what happens here is if you were to put all the things on, the first box that you're going to have is things that you know about yourself. I know that I'm loud. My friends all know that I'm loud as well. I know that I am neurotic and anxious. My friends all know that I'm neurotic and anxious as well. So there's these things about you that your friends also know. So you can talk to your friends about them. Your friends can help you with them. It's just a normal thing, okay? Below that is hidden area. Those are things that are not known to others. So you know them, but you would never talk about them. It could be, with a lot of people, it's kinks, right, Noah? Like that's a very common thing that you would know about yourself and you'd completely understand, but you would not share with others.
Yes.
I'm not saying you should share your kinks with others, so maybe it's not a great example. But the idea here is that
you got a safe space. Some way to do that is consensual and happy for you and the other person. Go for it.
Exactly right. So in this hidden area, I can't easily improve the things that I know about from this box because other people don't know about them, which means they're not helping me. I'm not able to talk about it. I'm not getting feedback about it. I'm not being helped if things get better. So that's that box. Then the upper right hand corner,
also an example of this.
What's that?
Birthmarks are also an example of this.
Yeah, right. Upper right hand corner is not known to self. These are things that your friends and strangers know about you that you don't know. You're a cheater is a really good example of this. There's lots of people in 40K that are bad actors that don't know. Like everyone that plays them knows. Everyone talks about it in the community, but they don't know. And they might not know because they didn't listen or because they're not aware enough to hear it, but everybody knows they're a cheater and they don't. Go ahead.
As an ADHD person, I don't know if you have this, but as an ADHD person, finding out one of those that is negative can sometimes be absolutely devastating to my mental health and my personal feelings of self.
Oh my God, yes.
It can make me very defensive and unhappy, especially if I find out from someone if I find out something negative about myself that someone else feels, who I thought I could trust or who I had a safe relationship with or who I had a good relationship with, and it turns out I do not because of this unknown thing. That is also that undermining is incredibly detrimental, and it's hard for me to stay proactive and creative and like constructive when one of those things comes up.
Yeah. Stephanie and I had a fight that we would both tell you is silly now. But what happened is I made a mistake in the laundry, which I've done the laundry for years because my wife works retail and she's as good as me. And I don't mind doing laundry. It's not that big of a deal. You have to set alarms if you have ADHD or laundry doesn't happen. But other than that, I like doing laundry.
This has been done in the washer for 9 years.
Yes, now it smells like mildew. It's great.
We have to watch
like when you put the shirt on and then you're walking around and it's like 3 hours into the day and you're like, oh my God, my shirt now smells terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so I messed up something in the laundry and she got mad and criticized the way I do the laundry. And I said, okay, you haven't told me that before. And she said, yes, I have. That's why I do my own laundry. But she doesn't do her own laundry. She was just upset and not saying the correct words. And I got really upset because I've done the laundry for years and I don't want to be seen as not helping, right? And what she said was, yeah, but you've been terrible at doing the laundry for 5 years. Oh. Now, I don't know if she meant that or not, probably. But that knowing that I've done a thing to be helpful for 5 years and then being told I was bad at it, I don't think she meant it, by the way, is brutal, like wildly brutal, because I've been doing it to be helpful for 5 years and no one's told me I'm bad at it, or they haven't, I didn't listen, is also a part of that box. Bottom right-hand corner, things you don't know about yourself and other people don't know either. That's high value stuff because it's in there. I think that a lot of emotional trauma is in that box. I think that everybody has their 12-year-old self inside of them, and that 12-year-old has a lot of bad things because being 12 was hard, or 13 or whatever age it is, and that kid in you needs to be heard, and it's really hard. So that's how I identify that kind of unknown area for me, is when I'm watching TV and something cheesy happens and I get emotional and I don't know why. Right? Like that's a perfect example of that box. Like, what the hell is happening right now? I am upset about this and I cannot tell you why. So why does the Johari window matter? Here's why. The more stuff that's in the open area, the happier and more successful you'll be. You can ask 100 therapists this question, and like 85 of them will agree with me. You can ask psychologists and psychiatrists. Everybody knows about the Johari window. It's incredibly widely used. I did high-end executive training for 5 or 6 years. We talked about the Johari window like a dozen times. So the reason I'm sharing this is about awareness. If you're going to go have a practice game, you better be effing open with what you're like. We're going to talk about this, but you need to be open about the stuff that's not known to others, right? How are you going to get better about it? I'm struggling with X. Oh, you are? I'll help you then. Go ahead, Noah.
So one thing, this is entirely inspired by you in this conversation then. So one thing, what do you think about, like, let's say you and I were going to play. Yeah. We're going to have a practice game. If you wrote down ahead of time a couple things that you think, for instance, like, that I need to improve at based on your play against me, and like what I need to improve at. Now, if we compare what I want to improve at during that practice game and what you think I should improve on in general, as far as like, say, deployment or whatever, and we look at that in the list and there's something on your list that is not on my list, that helps us identify a hidden spot.
Yep.
And then if we play and something happens and we see that we both understand I did it terribly, that means we could have just unearthed an unknown, and then we can identify that and use that to further inform other training. But I think that idea of like having your opponent annotate what they think you should be working on, or what they think are the worst parts of this matchup, or if they think the matchup is good or bad or whatever, independently of you, and then comparing before you start to play, is a good way to identify areas of growth and focus for the game.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that, I think what I would do is I would add a quote. This is I have several kind of family creeds or family kind of mottos that I say to the kids all the time. One of my favorite is, "You're not really injured. I'll tell you if you are." I did that with the little kids, and it completely worked. They'd come over to me and be like, "Am I really hurt?" And I'd be like, "No." And they'd be like, "Okay." And then they'd pop up, they'd like wander away. But my favorite one is, the only problems we can't solve are the ones we don't know about. And if you think, well, there are unsolvable problems, there are not unsolvable problems. There are problems where you have to readjust your life around the problem to live with it. That's still solving the problem. So, what's that?
Oh, I didn't say anything, but I thought very loudly that I think there are problems that cannot be fixed, right? There are problems like you can't I mean, you can replace an arm, but let's say you can't give yourself movement back or whatever if you were to lose use of your legs, but you could get prosthesis, right?
Yeah.
You can definitely, there are solutions to help you cope with anything.
Yeah. And the problem is that if you have a glaring weakness in your 40K game and you don't know about it, you're not going to improve it. So, okay, that's it for the Jahari window. Thank you all for being patient with me while I talked about something that is not really 40K. All right, so set expectations. That's the S and SFAP, just to bring you back around to the SFAP system, Noah.
Okay.
So first of all, you and your opponent are going to play. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you wanting to win? Are you trying to improve the matchup? Are you trying to just have fun? Because that's okay too. Are you purposely trying to play a less optimized list because you want to see how it is and get better at it? Are you testing something? Those are all different goals that your opponent should know about. Okay. What sort of list should they bring? I played an early game of Age of Sigmar where I brought what I thought was the best death army I could. This is like my third game of Age of Sigmar, and my friend brought an entire army of pink horrors that split for free into blues, split for free into brimstones. Like a turn into the game, the whole board is covered with demons that I've lost. He brought a wildly gross BS thing. I brought a brand new to the game, these are the models I own thing. That is not a good way to set up a practice game, right? I've had friends come over to my house and bring things that aren't optimized, and then I blow them off the table and it isn't effective. Okay. What kind of game should they expect? Do you want to have a really serious game on a clock so you can practice tournament play? I don't ever play that way with my friends. I play a very relaxed game where we're talking the entire time about what's happening, because I am a verbal learner and I need to take in as much data as I can. And some of that data is from me. Sometimes I'm saying the thing out loud so that I will remember it.
You're actually
what's that? Go ahead.
You're the only player who I practice with who I don't basically exclusively play on a clock most of the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I almost do almost all of my practice games on the clock.
Okay.
And I don't do as much now because especially if I'm playing against someone who's like not an experienced player, then it goes relatively quickly. But if I'm playing another experienced player, I almost only exclusively play on a clock because I have time constraints on my life. And clock management is important to a lot of the lists I play.
Yeah.
But I play against you because I know that is the way you play. I plan for more time for my games with you.
Yeah. But you wouldn't trade that, I don't think.
No, I think it's great. I also learn from you very well, but you also, the way you disseminate data is by problem solving with a person collaboratively. So I can learn more by taking more time with you, and you can improve by taking more time with me. Whereas if I'm learning in a vacuum, the way I learn is by repetition. So getting as many games in a window as possible is what, if I'm learning in a vacuum by myself.
Yeah, and I have to maximize the time I spend on those games. So that you're right. I do need to process it out loud. But the other side of that is our last game was Green Tide into Yanari, and I had no shot. And we both kind of knew that. So playing that game serious on a clock just wasn't valuable.
Yeah, but we also, I think that game is a really good example of everything we're talking about, because you and I both came to that and said, we both think that this game is bad for Yanari. Yeah. Colin, I think you thought the game was slightly less bad than it was for you.
Oh, yeah. If I skewed for it, I would be okay, I think.
Yeah, and we both agreed on that too. And we found out things about the matchup where we were able to find out exactly why we knew it was bad. It was bad because while you had the on average capability to play the game, to have all the resources and tools to kill the things you needed to, the moment one activation didn't hit that average point. So if you went low and I spiked on 5 pinballs, the entire game would start to spin wildly out of control.
Yep. That's actually an Eldar problem. Just in general, that's the way you beat Eldar.
I mean, that's the way you beat Custodies too. Anything that relies heavily on specific activations that need to do a thing, if you can reduce those activations efficiency and make them use an extra one, it's really, really painful.
One of the things that happens a lot in the Eldar mirror is that warp spiders try to kill warp spiders. And one of the things I've done is I'll set the Autarch warp spider in a very dominant position. And so if they come in with a warp spider and they shoot me, I'll use the free strat on the Autarch and I'll do -1 to wound. And what that will do is it will skew the math really bad because, as you know from being T5, warp spiders wounding on 5s is really bad. They just don't do it anymore. So now they're wounding on 5s and I have a 4-up save because it's AP1 ignore cover. And so they're going to kill like 2 warp spiders. And then the other 3 are going to spend a strat to shoot back. And because he doesn't have the same benefit, I'm going to do more damage. So like there's that sort of mechanic, right? Where you're planning for the thing, you need to see the thing, you need to understand the thing. But if the math goes wrong there, my plan just doesn't work at all. Right? Okay. So some examples of this. First of all, if you're me, a lot of this doesn't need to be talked about. If I invite Noah to a game, Noah knows I'm going to bring the grossest thing I can. And if I don't, I'm going to tell him. If I say, I don't think this is as good, but I have to see it, Noah's going to adjust his plan based on that. So I've over here, Noah, game on Wednesday. That's actually everything Noah needs to know if I don't say anything else.
Yeah. This is what the Magic community calls Rule 0. So when you play Commander, one of the things that makes Commander games fun is for everyone to be at approximately the same power level of deck. If one deck is grossly overpowered compared to if everyone's playing precons and one person's playing a $6,000 deck they've made from all the best cards, the game will not be fun. It's fun when everyone is playing something of approximately the same power level. So asking everyone, hey, what kind of Commander game we're going to play is important. This is called Rule 0. So Rule 0 is Colin setting the expectations. Me and Colin have spent enough time with each other. We know what our baseline Rule 0 is, and either of us will add a modifier if required. I will say, hey, I'm going to test something really weird. Colin will say, I want to try to understand what this deployment is like, or I want to try to see if this specific piece of tech works. And that knows
very common sentence for me is the second one here. Hey, no, really need help with green tide matchup. So that's me saying, not only do I want to play a game, but I want you to actively help me because I'm feeling like I struggle with this matchup. So if we just play a normal game, I won't get as much out of it. That's what I'm telling it. Dude, I'm struggling. Can we do a learning game? Even more base level, right? Noah, I don't feel like I'm playing 40K well. If you beat the wheels off me, the tires off me, whatever that saying is, it's not going to be helpful. So let's adjust our game with that in mind.
So I've done a lot of like training is something that I've built a very strong capability in my life, Marine Corps and my corporate life and whatever. And one of the key like hallmarks of good training is that the person you're teaching should leave the training ground feeling like they succeeded. Doesn't mean they had to have won. It doesn't mean they have to be perfect. They need to have succeeded. If you leave on a failure note, it is unlikely that they will have the same fervor or interest in participating in the activity. Positive feelings make people want to do things more, right? So if Colin thinks, well, I got my ass kicked, but I learned these 3 things and I feel much better about this for next time, that feeling is going to actually improve Colin's performance.
Yep, agreed. Especially if they have ADHD.
Yeah.
ADHD people respond much better to encouragement than they do to reprimands. Just in general, it's just kind of how the brain is. So yes, I completely agree with Noah. Okay, moving on. Here's the F, friendship. One of the trainings I give, so if we're a software company and people are going to go to a trade show that are not salespeople, and actually if they are salespeople, I teach a class on basically sales 101 and going to a trade show. And it's all about human interaction. So if you meet me for the first time, I'm going to use your name like 5 times in the first several minutes we speak. You're not going to notice I'm doing it, and you're going to love it. Just a thing. You want to hear your name. Sorry, you do. You can tell people you don't, but it's just a subconscious human being thing. If I don't understand your name or how to pronounce it, I'm going to stop and have you teach me. I want to know. It's important to me. I don't want to mess it up. It's important to me. It's going to make you feel special that I took the time to learn. So this kind of how do you quickly build a relationship with someone is very hard for the 40K community. The neurodivergence is very common, right? How many games at each tournament do you play where you think, I think this person's autistic? Like, it's just the way the community is. I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean,
no, it's very much
my ADHD is bad to the point where there are several days where I'm like, am I just a worthless human at how much I can't accomplish? Like, I get that mental health is hard. I'm not making
40K is a special interest game, right?
So I do a little bit of a class on basically winning people over and being friends. This comes from that. So what is Noah's expectations going into our game, right? Forget my expectations. What are his? What's he trying to accomplish? I can ask him. I could do that. How are they doing? Here's a great question. At a tournament, I often will ask this at the beginning of a round. Hey, Noah, this is going to be great. We haven't played in a while. Are you excited to roll some dice? If you do that enthusiastically enough, you might get an off-the-cuff reaction that tells you everything. Well, I didn't want to get you right now, right? How many times have you heard that in a tournament, the better players in the area? Now I'm going to pivot my game to make it more fun for them, right? Because I learned that.
Yep.
Sportsmanship is critical. You want your friend to help you get better? Don't be a dick during the game. Don't complain about dice. Nobody wants to hear you complain about dice.
Especially if you're winning.
What's that?
Especially if you're winning.
Yeah. Don't complain about bad things that happened when you're trying to learn. Like, don't bitch at your opponent about their rules. Like the things that irritate you in a game of 40K, don't do those things.
There are there's some very gentle ways you can do it that I think are usually pretty well received. Like when someone does something and it's very obvious they understand that is a very broken rule that they're taking advantage of because whatever, you can be like, I think you have said this to me before, and I've said this to you. Well, that seems fair and balanced.
Yeah.
Right. Usually doing it with a smile, making it a joke will go, or especially if you need to vent a little, because like also keeping things in can be really painful for some people while they're playing, but don't make it someone else's problem.
Yeah. I like saying this works this way because it's exactly how it should work.
Or they have grenades because reasons.
Yeah. Oh man, bomb squig and then grenade strat because that's fun.
Yeah. The best right now is that the bomb squigs on commandos go up on 2s and don't need line of sight, and the bomb squigs on tank busters go up on 3s and do need line of sight because GW only modified one data sheet when they made the change, which means commandos have better trained bomb squigs for reasons.
So accept feedback graciously. One of the things that my wife and I fight about is that both of us have very strong opinions about how things should be done. We were cleaning and packing up the house yesterday, and we argued several times about the right way to do the thing. One of the problems is when I'm problem solving, if you say, I think we should A, and I don't think we should A, I'm often just going to say, reason we can't do A. And a lot of people don't respond well to that, including my wife, because she feels like I'm being dismissive, right, of her idea. So when people are trying to help you, even if they're wildly wrong and you're confident they're wrong, there's no value in telling them so. So what I do is I say something along the lines of, it's the third thing on the right there. Oh, wow. No, sorry. The final one. I'm not sure that's right. That's really interesting, though, and I'm going to think on it. Right? I really appreciate the thing that you said, and I'm going to think about it, even though I do not think that you're right. It's basically what I'm saying.
When we went to that team event a couple weeks ago,
yeah,
we were all sitting around, and we were having discussions about like how, like someone would say how they thought a matchup would go, and someone would very assertively tell them they were wrong. No one got offended, and no one was upset. That was a room full of TISM. That was like definitely a room full of specialized interests and neurodivergence.
Yeah.
There was no one normal in that room. There was also nobody who, also everyone in that room communicates very similar to what you're talking about in terms of say a thing, wants direct and immediate feedback. Say a thing, wants direct and immediate feedback. You also have to you have to feel out if your opponent is someone who, not most people in 40K I feel like are this way, but I think there are definitely people who are more sensitive who sometimes you'll play. And so you have to be a little, I think your way is the best way. I do think I really love going away with my friends on 40K weekends because I don't have to, I get to take all of the fancy trappings of all the ways I communicate, and I just get to communicate natively.
Yeah. And I think that in general, 40K nerds appreciate the way I communicate in general, because a lot of the TISMs or the spectrum or whatever you want, a lot of that is comforted by blunt, open communication. And so if you look at who I've been successful being friends with, it's that crowd. I don't have a lot of friends who are professional salespeople. I don't have a lot of friends that are super outgoing, socially lubricated people that get along with everybody. My friends tend to be people that want a friend group to be in that makes them feel wanted. That tends to be who I attach myself to.
You and I had a moment at lunch one of the days where I, for the 9,000th time, talked about a detachment that was just kept coming up in all our conversations.
Yes.
And you replied with something like, I don't want to hear about this effing detachment.
Yeah.
You meant it in a kind of joking, lighthearted, like this thing keeps coming up.
Yeah.
I took the way that you talk in a way that like I don't like to be talked to, because a lot of it is like vocal direction. But
and you stood up for yourself, and then what did I do?
Colin, that is not the way I want to be talked to. And you said, okay. And then we literally just continued on like nothing happened.
Well, I apologized because I didn't mean anything by it.
Yeah. You apologized, and we were good. And I said, okay, it's cool. And we just continued, and it never came up again. Like it's never come up again.
It didn't need to. And the reality is that Noah had talked about that detachment to the point where I did feel the need to hit him, and the verbal response was better. So friendship. I have a few example quotes on here that I've got my excited for some dice on there. Nah, take it back. That's not the sort of game I want to play. Is a really good one. Or I don't want to win because of a gotcha. How many people say that quote? That's absolutely what part of this, right? I'm telling you that you were in a safe space. That's what that is. Like, I'm going to help you play 40K right now. I'm not going to just jack you because I have a rule you don't know.
Or when every ability that goes off on a 2 rolls a 1 for the whole game. Or when you blow up a vehicle and it blows up on a 6, which blows up another vehicle, which blows up on a 6, which blows up another vehicle, which blows up on a 6. Those are not good practice. They happen and you can't go around it, but that's not that you don't learn much from it.
I won't let you miss all your charges on the first turn in a practice game. Unless you were just being dumb and you shouldn't have done it anyways, and I need to show you that. I'm not going to, it's just not a thing. We had a game at the team tournament where our World Eaters player failed a 3-inch rollable charge and then a 5-inch rollable charge on his first turn and lost 900 points. He lost Daddy and also like some big important unit. And so his army was crippled on the first turn because he couldn't make 2 incredibly realistic charges. If that happened in a practice game, we'd re-rack.
Yeah.
Like, just a waste of time. Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Do you think that X is related? That's how you spin somebody to the question you actually want to ask. So, okay. So that's friendship. Ask good questions. I'll go through these quickly because most adults know these. Open questions, not yes or no. What do you like about that? How do you think this matchup would go? How do you feel the matchup should have gone differently? Don't ask yes or no. A lot of people, especially if they're shy, will just say yes or no and be done with the conversation. Flattery works really well at building relationships with people, but also asking questions. When I say flattery, I mean sincere. Please do not compliment people on things you don't mean. I try to find something about everybody's paint scheme. If they put effort into their models, I will find something I like about those models and tell them, because they put effort into it and it will make them feel good, and it makes me feel good to make them feel good.
Yeah,
that's it. I'm a very complimentary person. I don't think it takes any of my energy to compliment someone, so I might as well do it as long as I mean it, right? So a great example of this is, Noah, you have this green tide list on lock. Can you please help me understand how to play better against it? That is going to get a better response from most people than, fuck, this is hard. Tell me how to do better.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen to the answers we talked about. Active listening is really good. If you don't know that, it's okay, oh, all right, okay. That's active listening. Give every answer weight. I have a problem that I've had to spend my adult life trying to fix. I don't have the best memory. I'm not good at everything. I can't hit a baseball, but there's one damn thing I can do, and that's think really fast about the words I'm going to say. And I can process words I'm going to say while you're speaking, and I'll guess where you're going, and then I'll adjust based on where your sentence ends up. So I'm ready to roll when most people are done talking. The problem is that if Noah says, Colin, why do you think this matchup is hard for you? And then if Noah says, I think this matchup is hard for you because of XYZ, right? If I immediately respond and sound even a little bit defensive, Noah's going to take away, Colin did not listen to the question. Colin was just waiting to talk. And people hate that. So I have a thing that I do where I count to 1 in my head in a lot of conversations before I speak. And if you do that when someone's giving you feedback, they will love that you took the time to really appreciate their feedback. So Noah says, I really think you played too aggressively because of XYZ. And I go, okay, I can see that. That pause is a huge deal. Pay attention to it. Do you like that one, Noah?
I agree. So you and I have that same thing, right? Like the predictive spoilers, vision, processing. Also, like, I think people don't realize about ADHD people is like we spend a lot of time just randomly back end processing all kinds of shit that we think about different things, especially if we're like doing monotonous tasks. So we have really strong, well-formed analytical opinions about millions of topics.
Yeah.
And if someone says something, and we will very often have an opinion already that is very well researched,
queued up,
and very cute, and we will say it immediately, and they will think that we're just talking out of our butt, right?
Yeah. I don't know about you, but for a long time, my friends thought I was really impulsive about purchases. And I was, but in this particular case, they weren't right. They'd be like, wow, you bought that car really quickly. No, I've been thinking about buying a car for 3 months. And you just didn't know because I don't tell you everything my brain is doing.
Yeah.
So I have a great pressure washing story about this, but I'm going to do it after we do the last slide.
Okay.
Pay it forward. This is really important. Please don't only take in the 40K community. When I first started playing Age of Sigmar, when I came back to the hobby in 2017, I walked into a game store where nobody knew me. I looked at the models on the wall. I didn't understand what to buy. Someone who didn't work at the store got up from their paint table and came over and asked me if they could help me because I looked like I was struggling at purchasing 40K, right? And everyone was there at some point, and so that person wanted to help me, and I ended up being friends with them. So that level of love and affection and kind of eagerness to help is very common in 40K. So keep that in mind. And one of the things I want to say is, and this is completely counter to my own neurosis about maximizing my time, your experience is not always the most important. Sometimes you need to play a thing that isn't as fun, or you need to have a game that isn't as helpful for you because your friend needs that.
This is why I don't bring Green Tide to games if I'm, let's say, getting a pickup game at the store, and unless I specifically have like expressed to people that I need a practice game with my Green Tide. Right. If I just say, hey, I want a game, and someone who is not like a consistently competitive player plays, I don't bring the Green Tide, not because I'm whatever, but it is a very skewed match, so it's not good practice for most people because not a lot of people play it, and it's very different. And I'm probably not going to get a lot of benefit out of myself, but it's not good for my opponent to play into it if they're not specifically trying to improve that matchup or prep for an event where we might run into each other.
Right.
So not good for me to bring it.
Yeah, I agree. It's not easy for everyone to ask questions, so you need to listen carefully. It's hard for me sometimes because I'm so outgoing and I speak so easily to people to remember how hard it is for other people and how aware of that I have to be and how careful I have to be to make sure I'm hearing them. So that's the thing I have to include here. And then answer thoroughly. If a 40K player is asking you a question, it's probably not because they want a yes or no. They probably want detail. I put a few quotes on here that I say during games that fit in well with this. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm happy to walk you through how that works if you'd like. Let me tell you a thing people are getting wrong. Like, there's things in the game you can just be like throwing information back and forth at each other and building the expectation that that's what you're doing. Okay. My favorite is that for years, nobody understood that shuriken pistols were assault. And so I would advance my Howling Banshees, and then I'd shoot the pistols, because why not get some chip damage? And everyone thought I was cheating. No one knew that it existed. And so I'd say in every game, Noah heard me do this. This is hilarious. They've had assault weapons for years, and nobody knows. So evidently the world is that I get to go around and shooting people with my Banshees, and no one else does. I did not make them feel stupid for getting it wrong. I made it very clear that everybody gets it wrong. I gave them all the information that they need to know about the rule. We're now moving on, and they've learned a thing. Cool? Cool.
Yep.
All right. What do you think of pay it forward, Noah?
I think pay it forward is very important, because I think you also want you want to continue to have positive experiences with the person you're playing. And so giving that energy to them, one, hopefully will help make them better players, make them better practice opponents, and you will get the benefit of that yourself.
Yep, I agree. In conclusion, talk to people and get to know them. It's great. That's the summary of what I talked about today. So let me tell my pressure washing story to wrap us up here. Let me put the slides away because they're not needed anymore. Oh, or not. There they go. Noah. A thing was happening while pressure washing. And it was frustrating. And it was that ADHD kid and ADHD dad were pressure washing. And I was going very tentative through the pressure washing, because I am worried that I'm going to F something up. I have destroyed things while pressure washing them before. I'm aware of the inherent risk of being too aggressive and going too fast with pressure washing. I'm pressure washing. I'm halfway up our ridiculous staircase. I'm going very slowly, doing an excellent job. My kid comes up and says, "Why don't I take over for you?" And I say, "No, I think I'm good because blah, blah, blah." He says, "Well, if I take over, it'll be done much faster."
Oh.
Which, after I resisted the urge to punch my child, which, sometimes you happen. You don't ever punch them, but that doesn't mean you can't want to punch them, right, Noah? Like, you don't have sons, so maybe this is different. But in general, sometimes a teenager needs to get hit. It just can't be from you. So,
right.
So he says this, and I kind of send him away. Okay. And I keep doing the pressure washing. And, my hand's getting a little tired. It's a lot of vibrating. And so I let him take over. And I watch him pressure wash. And he is constantly stopping to adjust the way he's holding it, to move the backpack piece, like the hand, the pressure washer piece. He's moving that. He's playing with the hose. He's moving it. He's trying different things. He's going fast, and then he's going slow, and then he's going fast. And he's arguing that he's going to get done fast, that he's faster than me. And I go inside, and hours go by, and he does this small segment of tile. Later, I'm explaining what had happened to my wife, and I said to her, this doesn't work, and I can give you the World of Warcraft analogy or the Warhammer 40K analogy. Which one would you like? And my wife said neither. But Noah wants them both. So Noah gets them both.
Of course.
Analogy number one, you can't DPS from the floor. I am a tank. In all MMOs, I am a tank. That's what I like doing. As a tank, it is the healer's fault if I die. It is the DPS's fault if they die. There are the people whose job it is to do damage. Okay. In a raid, I don't care if you do the best damage on the team if you die 20% into the fight, because the overall damage you're going to do for that whole fight is terrible. Tucker wasn't slower because he was pressure washing at a different speed than me. Tucker was slower because of the amount of downtime he inserted in what he was doing.
Yes.
So his uptime, it doesn't matter if he was going faster than me when he was pressure washing, because his downtime was much worse. Here's the 40K equivalent, Triptide. In 8th edition, there was a list called Triptide. The entirety of the damage from the Tau list was 3 Sid Commanders and 3 Riptides. Nothing else in the army even shot. It was those 6 things and marker lights and drones. Entire list. Okay. I thought the list was bad because on the first 2 turns playing against it, I didn't take as many losses as other people who shot me up. In actuality, that list was good because the Riptides never died. And because the Riptides never died, the Civ commanders didn't die. And so the army wasn't about doing all of its damage front-loaded like so many armies are. It won because it lived. And because it lived for all of the turns, its overall damage output was much higher than other armies, because by turn 3 or 4, it still had a lot more alive than your opponent did. Uptime. So very, very reasonable 40K conversation that I thought I would share as I got overly frustrated watching my kid wrestle the the pressure washer like it was an angry snake.
For sure.
Yeah. Reasonable, Noah, or just silly? Too silly?
No, I think it's good. I think also it highlights something that I think is important, is that your understanding and someone else's understanding of a situation might be very different.
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out what that understanding, like when we talked about trade-offs, like do people trading units or whatever, like one of us is right, one of us is wrong.
Yeah.
And understanding how the other person is thinking about a thing, I think, is very important, especially for practice.
Yeah, I agree. Practice. All right, we talked about practice. The topic, yes, we'll be done in 1 minute, Noah. The topic that I wanted to talk about that we didn't get to is favorite 40K video games. And so I'm going to make that a side topic. We're gonna. I think that maybe we should do like a Sweet 16 or like a 32 and put all the 40K video games on it, and then and then we can like compete them against each other and find out what we think the best one is by like, okay, between these two, which one's better, right? Like that. That's not actually competitive content, but I feel like we should do it anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
So I already know what my favorite is, but maybe I'll find out that I'm wrong.
You should play Space Marine 2 before you make that decision.
I can't afford Space Marine 2 right now, but I will after I move.
I will at some point hang out with you and either have you to my house or go to whatever place you're at, or we'll go to the store after hours and I'll put it on the screen and we'll play it.
Okay. It is co-op, and so I will play through it because that's the specific thing that my friends and I play is co-op. The reason I don't own it is because 2-player co-op through the game is not enough.
No, it's 3-player co-op. And
what's that?
It's 3-player co-op, but you can have a robot. But it's up to 3-player co-op.
Oh, well, that's fun. Okay, maybe I'll play it sooner than I thought. All right, everybody. That is a competitive advantage number 4 for April 16th. I want to thank my wonderful co-host, Noah Dome, and shout out his store, HS Games in Bellingham, Washington. And if you are nearby and you've not been there yet, what the hell is wrong with you? What the heck is wrong with you? Excuse me. Some people really don't like hell being used that way. I'm trying to get better about it. So I really appreciate him. You see me live. I am going to try to release a thing between now and then. So we'll see if that happens. But I am literally spending the majority of every day getting ready. 15 hours washing over 2 days was a lot.
For sure.
So thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I'm calling because someone has to be. Bye.
Bye.